And then I also knew that there was nothing wrong with me. And when I did my first, it was this little chocolate of just a little bitty chocolate, out like that. And I did half of it, which was 0.25 grams of mushrooms. Took that, and about 20 minutes later, and I just went on working. 20 minutes later, I could feel some shift, and I wasn't sure what it was. But after that shift, I'm working and I'm more productive than I had been. And after about 2 hours, I looked up and was like, whoa, because I heard a noise happening outside that would have interrupted me right away. I had been working for 2 hours, and it was like a hammer, what do you call them? Jackhammer? Jackhammer. Yeah. It was a jackhammer. Yeah. A jackhammer would have thrown me off right away. About 2 hours. It was just something in the background. I was like, oh my God, what is this? Oh, I just wept because I've never had that level of quiet. Okay. Hi, Joel.
Well, hello.
Thank you so much for joining me.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
There have been many people who have been asking me different things about Colombia, and I said, there's somebody who can answer this. So I
hope so.
You've been here longer, and you understand the culture, you understand the what they consider alternative things better than I do, and you do a lot of other things. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to introduce you, and when they have certain questions, or at least to understand what's available to them when they come here. So, all right. What I want to do is, first of all, everybody can hear that you are not Colombian.
Yeah.
So, can you tell us what your journey was, and what brought you here, and what you love about the place? Because now you've made it home.
Yes. Okay. I've been here traveling in 2013. I was traveling around South America for 8 months, and one of my friends said, "You can't miss out on Colombia," and he was right. And then in 2018, I finished my studies. At the same time, the job where I was working, they decided to close the company.
Was that here?
No, that was in Denmark.
In Denmark.
And yes, I was in Denmark. And then I was looking for a new job, and everything was really boring. I was looking, and I said, I don't want to spend 40 hours a week doing something that's super boring. So I set a goal. I said I need to be out of Denmark for the winter because it's just dark and people are depressed and don't want to do anything socially. And I needed to go somewhere I could afford to be for like 4 months, where it was warmer than Denmark and where I could speak the language somewhat, and then work on my own project. So I had a lot of ideas of what to do, and I looked up and I was like, okay, it's going to be either Colombia, Mexico. And I said, I've been to Colombia before, it's a good place to start. I came, I was going to stay for 4 months, develop my projects, and go back to Denmark and implement them. Within 4 months, I was a cafe owner, and I hosted a lot of events in other places, and I stayed. And now it's been 3.5 years.
I love it. And there are many stories like that, and it's certainly been mine. And because I started on my South America journey, started in Panama, thought I was about to just do, some 3-month hopping here and there. And then I landed in Colombia, did my 3 months, got an extension, and now going, okay, talking to people about what visas I can get to extend my stay. So I love this place, and I love it for a lot of reasons. One is that, and this isn't the main one necessarily, but it is the sustaining one.
Okay.
Is my first experience with mushrooms. And in the United States, they would consider me as having A.D.D. I've never been officially diagnosed, but I certainly have a lot of the characteristics. I was fortunate in that I have a father who protected me. And for anybody who tried to say anything was wrong with me, because they tried to say because I didn't sit still and wasn't that, child who sat in a box and was obedient and all of that there was something wrong with me and wanted to put me in slow school or whatever you call them, slow classes. And my daddy was going, I'm not that. No, there's nothing slow about that child, and you will not. So he took me and put me in private schools because he said, I will pay somebody to do whatever they got to do in order to deal with my child rather than them say that something's wrong with her. So went my entire life with this noise in my head, which a lot of people have been told something is wrong with them for. I knew nothing was wrong with me. My dad knew nothing was wrong with me. Very smart, able to do whatever, and that's the case for all of us. I personally, and I am not a medical doctor, I am not a licensed psychologist, I am not any of those things, although I have a psychology degree, and when I got to know the DSM-3R, that is when I decided I wanted absolutely nothing to do with psychology anymore. So, I learned to cooperate with how I'm built. I know nothing's wrong with me, and I know those ideas that continue to come, it's purposeful. Because I can come up with stuff for anybody else to resolve things for other people like that. Because that's part of my makeup. But when I needed to sit, I didn't know how to, for the longest time, didn't know how to quiet. So through meditation and then learning tapping and learning all kinds of other different things, I learned to cooperate with. And I certainly didn't allow other people to tell me something's wrong with me. So I know that you have probably experienced through, first I want you to tell us some of the things that you do around the alternatives and this wonderful cacao. And then tell us some of the experiences that other people, you've known other people to have that have had some lasting effects on them.
All right. Well, first I think it's interesting, the whole thing about being told something is wrong with you, because I think the whole education system is built for you being in a very certain way. The school system is kind of built kind of wrong, because it's just built to make kids sit down and shut up for 8 hours a day, which is not what kids are made to do. They're curious and they want to play and they want to ask questions and they want to move their bodies or they want to joke, but they're just told, no, sit down, shut up, listen. So it's not strange that a lot of kids are being told something's wrong with you, or you use this, or you have this diagnosis, because I think the system is not built for just any type of kid, it's just built for a very squared way of living. And there are different things that can help us to focus in everyday life.
Yes.
And it's very different from person to person. I remember I tried a lot to sit down and meditate. It didn't work very often.
So you had similar experiences?
And yeah, to some extent, yes.
Yes, I think it's the case for most of us. And it's so unfortunate that, let me specifically say that I'm talking about a particular country, the one I'm from, that makes this such a big deal because they needed to create worker bees. They needed to create people who would support the system that had been set up. And those of us who don't fit in it, then they had to label us as something being wrong with, and then create another way to make money off of us. So then it was the diagnosis, and then it's the drugs. When the truth is, there are natural things that work with all of us, no matter what's going on with us. And that's where I know you're about to go, so I'm gonna hush.
Yeah, I wasn't very good at focusing in school as well, but I was lucky I had the gift of like talking and figuring out things kind of easily, so I did well enough, and I was never told that anything was wrong with me. I just didn't like to do homework or stay focused for a very long time. But later on in life, I started to try to meditate, sometimes to focus, sometimes to like calm the mind and calm the body. But often it just led to frustration. I was sitting down and I was like, think of nothing, focus on your breath, what am I going to eat later? And it just always happened. I said, what is wrong? Why can some people meditate and others can't? And I talked to a friend and he had just run a marathon. And he said, that's his meditation. I said, you're insane. And he said, no, that's my meditation. I'm like, what? And so he entered a meditative state, running. And then I reflected, well, that's what I do when I dance. And that's, here in Colombia, I've started to host ecstatic dances. Because I had a need of having some kind of space where I could dance, where there was not a lot of drunk people or a sticky floor or reggaeton music, which I'm not a big fan of. This is the city of reggaeton. And so I started hosting ecstatic dances, which is an active meditation where you dance and you don't consume any substances, and you don't consume alcohol, for example, you don't talk while you dance. You just connect through the music and your body, and you can enter ecstatic or meditative states.
Yeah, your kinesthetic processor
Yeah.
is what it means. You know, there's auditory, visual, and kinesthetic, and that's part of being in your own body in order to process anything, or in order for energy to move through your body. And we all, I believe that any issues we're having within, it's because energy is just stagnant, and that energy needs to move. So you figured out what helps your energy move, and they created a business around it. Yes!
That's because my mentor, he always told me every time I had a good idea, he was like, well, but where are you in this idea? And I'm like, what do you mean? And he always wanted me to take, like, the starting point, me and my me. And I always thought it was really annoying because I had great ideas. I thought at least. Until I got to here. And I started to fulfill all my own needs. So I wanted ecstatic dance, and I started doing it. I wanted Temazcal, which is the Mexican sweat lodge. And I found that most of the offerings that came out to foreigners within my network were super expensive. I said, that's ridiculous. Because we're in Colombia, it's not supposed to be so expensive.
Yeah.
And so I started to look it up, and I found a woman that I could work with. She's super honest, she's super skilled, and I could start offering it at what I consider to be a reasonable price, both for local and for foreigners. And so again, it was my own need that led to me doing something specific. I host every month open mics. And
I came to an open mic. It was fabulous.
It is a lot of fun, and it's a place, again, it's kind of a meditation as well, because it's where people can express part of themselves, part of their creativity, part of their soul through spoken words, music, comedy, storytelling, and improv. And again, it was my own need. I looked for a poetry slam. I was like, I have things to express, and I want to express them and share them with people, and I couldn't find it. So I created it. And then I host also cacao ceremonies.
I love it.
Is also something.
Tell people what cacao is. Everybody doesn't know. I didn't know.
The ceremonial cacao is basically just the cacao bean, which is ground down to a paste. So a cacao liquor, and then it's either turned into like a bar, or you can granulate it into like what looks like a powder, but it's full of all the fats and nutrients. And cacao is a stimulant. It's like caffeine is a stimulant, coffee is a stimulant, but that affects your central nervous system. So it means if you drink a lot of caffeine, your whole system is going to go into like a little bit of alarm, you're going to get anxious maybe.
I wonder how I know that. How do you think I know that, Joel?
Not from experience, I bet. You've read it in a book.
I totally put some cacao in my coffee.
The coffee.
Do you remember I told you I did that?
I do not remember.
I put some cacao in my coffee. And I was buzzing.
Yeah.
I was that's what I felt like.
It's good mocha.
And decided, okay, maybe I won't do those together again. And I haven't.
The difference between the cacao and the coffee, like the coffee stimulates the central nervous system. So when we have a lot of it, it tends to make a lot of people anxious, or shake, or buzz a lot. The cacao is a vascular stimulant mainly. It also has caffeine, but at very low amounts. While the main stimulant is theobromina, which is the vascular stimulant. So it means it goes and affects your heart, it then beats harder or faster, and it sends blood around faster in your body.
Yeah.
And it makes around, what I could read from different studies, around 30 to 40% more blood flow to your brain, which makes you more focused. So instead of getting you to be more like this, it actually senses you in something. So there's different explanations of why cacao is a heart medicine. It's considered a heart medicine. It's been with the Mayans and the Aztecs, and also thousands of years before that. You found cacao in vessels in liquid form. So we don't know for how many years it's been used, but for many thousands of years before the Mayans.
Another natural something to work with, however we're built. Because we're all built a particular way. We process information a particular way. And those natural things just assist us to still do what we do, but to be able to modulate it. It just makes all the difference in the world.
And it's funny how some stimulants have become so popular, and others that traditionally have had such big value have just become, a product you put into some kind of milk chocolate and there's no real cacao in it. Because for the Mayans or the Aztecs, this was food of the gods, which is what Ceremonial means.
Yes.
And it was considered insanely valuable. For in some cultures, it was only for like the most prestigious royal people that were highest in the hierarchy or for very special occasions. And you could trade it for almost anything. It was like gold, the diamonds. It was worth a lot.
Wow.
And now it's coming back now. But for a lot of years, it was just Nestle putting it into any kind of thing and kind of losing its value, over roasting it, processing it down, separating the fats when it's dry, and then adding a shit ton of sugar to it and some milk to it.
Capitalism.
Then you just have nothing left of it.
Yeah.
While coffee is still, related to the coffee bean. You get coffee bean, toast it, grind it, and you drink it. So this is what we do in cacao ceremonies. We just take the bean. Some people prefer not to toast it, some toast it lightly. Then they grind it down to this liquid, and then turn it into bar, and then you can make beverage out of it. When we drink that beverage, it makes our heart beat faster, it makes the blood flow around in our body, and it makes us more focused.
Yeah.
So you become more focused on this thing that beats harder and faster. That certainly has a different rhythm.
Yeah.
So it helps us a lot to do meditations around the heart. What are we feeling? So often in cacao ceremonies, we call it heart opening ceremonies. And we set intentions to let go of something, to transform something, to understand something. And my ceremonies usually last around 3 hours. We do some breath work, we do some meditation, and we do some different introspective exercises, sometimes in pairs, sometimes by ourselves through writing.
It's beautiful.
And then we have some sharing circles where we reflect on the experiences.
And live music too.
Sometimes we have live music as well. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And you do this out in nature.
I sometimes do it at home, I sometimes do it out in nature. Yeah. It depends a little bit on the time. If it's raining too much like it was like last month. It depends on the group as well. There's different things that influences it. Yeah. But setting is important. Yeah.
That's beautiful. So a lot of people know about ayahuasca, so they hear that and they hear about people's lasting effects and how they come back different. Well, maybe I should set this up first, because with mushrooms, many people go to different kinds of ceremonies in order to do what they call a trip, to go on a trip, because they take the more of the mushroom that you have, the higher doses. As I said, I do the 0.25 grams, which is not going to send me tripping at all. It's just going to help me to just kind of, focus and put all that noise in the background and let me just kind of choose what I want to focus on. But there are also people who take, 2 to 3 grams, and that's considered a trip.
2 grams, 3 grams, 5 grams sometimes.
So anything 2 and over is considered a trip.
I think around 1 gram is around the threshold dose of it being a psychedelic experience, but it's considered quite a light dose, but it's still considered a psychedelic experience.
Okay.
You would say microdosing is usually between 0.05.
Yes, microdosing. That is the term, microdosing. I microdose.
Yeah. And it goes up to, it's a little bit discussed how high it goes up, 0.3, 0.4. It also depends a lot on your tolerance, because some of the people I know that microdose, they take 0.15 and they can close their eyes and they can start to have visions with their meditate. And others take 0.3, double the amount, and they don't have any kind of visual experience at all.
It's totally individual.
With a microdose, not to trip. It's not to have psychedelic effects.
Yes.
And our sensitivity towards the mushrooms can be very, very different. So it's about finding one's dose. So it's better to start lower, and then up the dose a little bit if you feel like, okay, I don't really feel it, or I'm not having the desired effects. Because if you go a little bit too high, it can provoke some kind of anxiety sometimes, or you can end up in unwanted situations where you have to do something important but you feel unable to do it.
I got it.
So try not to trip when you microdose.
I think I've decided that I am more of a microdosing girl, not a tripping girl. But I did get a dose enough for a small trip. And I'm the kind who, if I'm going to do anything like this, and I've never, let me make a disclaimer, that I've never done any kind of drugs, because growing up in the United States, southern states, and Bible Belt and all of that, and marijuana was the gateway to drugs, and terror built within me about doing any kind of drugs. And saw it around me, saw family and others who were on drugs and saw what they did. I mean, it's not easy. I was not going to be doing no drugs. That was already on the table and decision made. But as I started to expand and understand, and not just expand, start to read and understand why psychedelics are shut down like they are in the States. It's all about capitalism. It's all about making sure that people don't have access to natural things. Then I started to go, well, hell, I'm not interested in doing those street drugs. I do want to try something that might help me. I'm always looking for things to cooperate with who I am. And so I had already put it on my list a long time ago. I am going to try some mushrooms, and that means I got to leave the U.S. to do it. Then that's what I'm going to do. But when I got here, microdosing was all I had on mind. I'm not trying to trip. I'm just in a space where I don't know what that's going to do, and that part I have a healthy fear of, right? But I did try it. So in my own bedroom by myself, then I took a lower dose. I think it was either 1.5 or 2 grams. And what I hear about other people's experience is that it's so vivid and everything is so bright, and when they come out of it, everything is just so light. They're able to release a lot of stuff that they had. Well, when I went into mine, I don't think I had no stuff, first of all, because personal development is what I do. That's my work. So I don't carry stuff. I know how to move energy. I know how to do all of that. So I didn't go in like, well, maybe there's something there, I don't know. But let's see. And I still haven't really talked about my experience. Because mine was not this light, stuff that I hear people talk about. Mine was very different. I didn't come out of mine like, oh, the world is so much lighter. Oh, all this like that wasn't my experience. And it was a low dose. I didn't, go high with it. But I also think that it depends on what your perspective of the world is, anyhow. So while I know the world to be goodness and light, I also know that there is some darkness in the world. I've had a couple experiences just before it where some stuff was being exposed that basically we've been lied to about in the US, and I went down a rabbit hole, and that could have influenced.
That probably did influence.
That could, because
you watch a lot of Netflix, that's going to influence how your microdosing is going to be. If you read certain types of news, you have certain types.
And I never consumed
there's
stuff
people
like that.
who try something and then just wants everybody to have it. My friend, she recently went to this finca where she was going to stay for a week to work, and the first thing the guy who owns the finca told her was like, "You have childhood trauma, you need to take ayahuasca." And she's like, "You don't know me," and that's a very good thing to say, right? And especially with these types of medicines, you can't really know what type of experience you're going to get.
That's right.
So some people have overseen and accompanied some processes where some people get very deep into hurt feelings or traumas, or review a lot of their values, and it's very rough processes.
Yeah.
But also one that was very recent, she was very nervous, and she suffers from a chronic pain disease, fibromyalgia.
Yeah.
And we believe it to be based in a certain type of trauma, in part, a certain type of trauma, unreleased emotions, a lot of bad relations. And so she was very nervous going into it, very nervous. And the experience was super beautiful.
Oh,
because
I love that.
she went into all of the bad relationships, all of the traumas, a lot of difficult situations in her life, and the death of her brother who died way too young, and in a very traumatic way. And she met all of it with love.
Yes,
she cried a lot of tears of joy, she let go, she accepted a lot of things. She said she reconciled with a grandmother that she's never met, but she felt had a big impact on her life. And so it's very different what people experience.
I love that the word acceptance, because you've got to come to the point of accepting whatever life has delivered. As long as we're resisting it, then we're preventing the energy from moving. The energy can't flow. It can't move, and I say it all the time, if you're not accepting something, then it gets stuck in you. You've got to accept it for it to really dissolve.
People that have never tried psychedelics are scared of a bad trip.
Yeah.
In my perspective, no such thing exists.
Yeah.
I don't think mine was bad. There's only one way to create that trip, and it is exactly not accepting.
Yeah.
If you deny reality, if you deny what is coming your way, you're trying to run away, but it's right in front of you, then you're gonna have a bad experience.
Yeah.
Like if I try to make this table levitate, and I want to do this before I go to bed, and it's just not working, I'm gonna have a bad evening, and I'm probably not gonna sleep. So if something is coming up, and that is what's right in front of you, and you try to run away, but it just keeps following you, you don't accept it, you try to run, you're gonna have a bad experience. So if you decide to take some kind of psychedelic, then you need to be open to whatever comes. It might be a super beautiful experience where you meet your traumas or your experiences with a lot of love and understanding. It could also be that you meet it with a lot of pain and you release a lot of emotions, or you even start to remember things that you didn't know had happened to you or happened in your life, and it's uncomfortable.
Yes.
But you have to meet it with acceptance and understanding and curiosity, because the second that you decide that you don't want to see it, that you want to run, that is the only time you can have a bad trip. You can have a difficult trip, but not a bad one if you just accept it.
Just accept it. I completely agree with that, even with mine. I knew whatever happens, resisting it is not the thing. Just allow it is, accept it as it's coming, and even if I set it up to go the way it did, it was, even for me, whatever is happening in the world, that is outside of my control. I have to accept it and keep on moving. That's a boat that's already sailed. That boat is sailing, and either I accept it or I create my own suffering. And I'm not going to suffer in this. I decided a long time ago, I am not suffering through life. I am accepting whatever I need to accept. And so even with all of the stuff that was coming up, the visuals that wasn't unicorns and rainbows, then I just allowed it. And when I came out of it, I wasn't disturbed, because I know it is so, that stuff is indeed happening. Those things are indeed real. I know that it can only impact me if I decide it's my problem. But if I accept it as just part of what is, it's not going to directly impact my life. And so it was not a bad trip. It just wasn't unicorns and rainbows.
I talked to some different people in my network that have done several months of microdosing, and the first month they had one type of experience, and it was very focused, or it was very creative, and then the second month, where they had like a new supply of chocolates, then they would say, but this is very emotional. And so sometimes it's because of where you are in your life, and sometimes it's because mushrooms are little sponges that just absorb everything. So maybe the people who cultivated those mushrooms went through some kind of emotional process.
Wow.
But it was interesting because they were...
Everything is energy.
Yeah, it really is. It really makes a big difference. And it's also an emotion we don't allow a lot for in our productive everyday life. So it's often a repressed emotion.
Yes.
I mean, it's not that we walk around and we have a lot of things to be sad about, but a lot of times we just repress just a tiny bit of sadness, but then it builds up.
Yes,
So
it
that's
does.
in there somewhere.
That's right.
If it's not allowed in our everyday productive life because it lowers productivity, then it's gonna come out eventually, either in sickness or in tears.
That's right. That's right. Those are the outlets.
Mm.
Those are the outlets. You have to move it. You have to move it. Oh wow, that was great. That was really, really good. I enjoyed that. So tell me, tell the people how they can get in touch with you. What is the best way for them to find out about all these wonderful happenings you've created in Colombia?
I host a lot of monthly events. I mostly post all of them on my Instagram, which is called Conexion in Spanish, like Conexionubuntu. Ubuntu being the South African word.
Yes.
That can be explained in a lot of different ways.
I was about to ask you, what does that mean?
One is like I am because we are, but I think Desmond Tutu explained it in the best way. He says, I am human because I participate, I share, and I belong. So you share part of yourself and you participate actively. You don't become a consumer of everything you step into, and you belong. So all of the events I try to create goes under this umbrella of creating this connection with being human through experiences that you actively engage in, where you share part of yourself and you find community, belonging. Because to me that is what's being human. And that brings me back to your first question. Why am I in Colombia? I feel at home. I could be in Denmark and feel at home. I love being in Denmark. I happen to find myself here, and I happen to stay because I enjoyed it. Recently I went back to Denmark. I said I could still totally live here, and I decided not to live there. But when I came back to Colombia, I said I do belong, and I do actively participate, and I share a big part of who I am. So this is where I am from.
That is awesome. I love that story. Well, this is where I am for now too, and I feel at home. The people are amazing. I love the people of Colombia, and I've said that I am collecting my global family. I believe that we are in a space where our world has changed so much, and there was so much individualism. Some of it people went off on their own for, and the U.S. created. But I think there are also a lot of people who were forced into individualism because they didn't come from solid backgrounds or through greed and money issues and all of that. Then families have just broken apart, and they don't have that communal, collective ecosystem, And so I think that through all of this breakdown, it is totally to get us back to the communal parts, but not to get rid of individualism completely, because it's not all that. Individualism also means that people have to come to the place of understanding themselves enough to be productive. And so my whole work is about individuality and understanding your own makeup, your own thought processes and how you feel.
And taking responsibility.
And taking responsibility for all of that, the good, the bad, and the ugly, so that you can shine and operate in all your brilliance, all that good, that bad, become aware of, and not trespass on another person, not put that off on others. And we all have some ugly. When you recognize what that ugly is, then part of the reason we're here is we came to learn and grow and to expand. In that ugly, that's our work, to clean that up, especially so it doesn't leak over onto other people. So the individuality within individualism is necessary. We have to be full individuals before we can actively come together in a community and truly give what
There's
we
a
need to
great
give
book.
to each other.
Because if you work only towards saving other people, towards society, then you might forget to take care of your own family. Because you're working all the time in this NGO and Amnesty International to save the whole world and save human rights while you're getting a divorce and your kids never see you. And you might be so obsessed with trying to save the soil that you just yell at all people at all times because they're not doing what you want them to do. So you destroy the society, you create warfare in society. So it says you need a balance between the soil, and society.
I love that Holy Trinity.
Yeah.
Because that's my wheelhouse. Because that is how we get to the point that we are really able to flow with life rather than getting stuck and being so resistant. Just get to the point of being able to accept the things that happen in life and go on. I believe that we're built for this. We're built that level of tough. We just don't know it because we accept all the labels that people give us, we all the limitations.
Generally raised in a culture that wants us to go a certain way, and so we learn what to think rather than how to think.
There we go.
Then, we don't get to that point of reflection, usually.
Absolutely. This was fabulous, Joe. Thank you so much for coming by. And for us to have this conversation, to be able to help the people out, and because I'm getting questions, I'm like, look, I know somebody who knows this. So thank you so much for coming in. You're a wealth of knowledge. I'm so happy to know you. And we'll be doing some of the activities that you create around Colombia together.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. So Joe, what is this? You call this the grandfather. What makes it the...
So I was in Mexico, which is the Theobroma bicolor. This is what's called Theobroma Cacao, which is what we consume in chocolate.
Okay,
so
that's regular chocolate.
Regular cacao, regular chocolate. And these seeds actually I harvested myself directly from the cacao pod. I fermented them, and dried them and toasted them. So this is what you grind down into a paste, and then you make chocolate out of it.
Okay.
All this is also what is called cacao nibs.
Yeah.
So you chop it up and then it's nibs. You put it in muesli or cakes or cookies or whatever. This is then the little bit bitter, usually. Acidic. It depends a lot on which cacao seed you get. Right here I have different chocolate bars, and some of them are 80%, so it's very high in cacao, but they're not at all bitter, because where the cacao is grown and the type of seed is not a bitter seed. I have some that are 70%, which means they have actually 10% more sugar, but they're more bitter. But it's because the seed and the climate is grown in.
Got it.
But yeah, so this one is a little bit bitter. It's not too bad. And
I like those.
And this one is what I was told in Mexico, the grandfather of the cacao, called Theobroma bicolor, or also called pataxte.
It's
And
nice.
this is white, and it's not at all bitter.
It does have a hint of cacao in it. Look how that one came out.
Yeah, very.
So
that's
totally
tiny
nips
already.
It's already nips. And I'm gonna make sure I don't miss any of it.